We are halfway through 2025 and almost done with June, so I want to tell you about my 5-star reads so far in the year. Let's start with There's No Such Thing as an Easy Job by Kikuko Sumura. I loved this book. I'm really glad that I waited to do this video until after I'd read this because it had so many themes that I think are relevant to a lot of us out here. The main character burnt out of her job and she's looking for a change in careers, looking for some place where she can belong and something that she says she wants easy. But what she really wants is something meaningful. And I think that speaks to a lot of us. We don't mind hard work as long as the work is meaningful and can provide a meaningful life for us, which the main character is looking for. And it's not easy. But some of the jobs she goes through, I do feel very envious of. Like her uh, rice paper cracker job, where she literally was just writing like trivia on the paper itself. If I could find a job like that, I promise you, you would never hear from me. Nothing. Nada. But it wasn't what she was looking for. She was looking for something where she could find meaning and, a sort of solid pursuit. And the lesson that she learned along the way doing these various jobs that were honestly good, decent jobs, finding out about herself and what she really wanted in life, the lessons really speak to a lot of us in the millennial generation and Gen Z, those of us who are kind of struggling in the workplace, the working field right now. So if you feel like you're not sure if you want to switch careers or you're not sure if this career is for you, I recommend reading this book. And if you're not having any job troubles but still want to read a really well written and like very interesting novel, I still recommend this book. Especially if you're looking for like new creative ideas on what to read or what job you want to pursue. So let's move on to the next book, All the Lovers in the Night by Mieko Kawakami. I first heard about this author through somebody on their Substack, Ian Arten. She was talking about the book Heaven that Miss Kawakami also wrote, and that is on this list in a little bit. Don't worry about it. But this was my first book of hers, and it was just such a beautiful story. It's a story about loneliness and about faith, leaps of faith, choices that we make in our lives to either, compound or to break our loneliness, the way it sort of creeps up on you without even realizing it. It was just such a tender story, really, about this the main character just trying to change because she looked at her life and she realized like there's really no one around me and I feel like a ghost. So she met somebody who kind of inspired her to want to, take the leap forward, but really, she wasn't brave enough to do a leap yet. So all she could do was one step and then the next step and the next step. And so many times in this novel, like I kind of my shoulders were by my ears because I was like, oh no, like I just felt like I wanted her to have an easy time of it. But that's the thing about living as a human being. The things worthwhile are very often not easy, like we mentioned with the first book that Miss Sumura wrote. So it's kind of a, long-standing theme. You want a life well lived? You gotta face some cringe and some embarrassment and some heartbreak. And our main character does face a lot of heartbreak. It is a sad story in some parts, but more than anything, it's so full of hope and tenderness. And it really tells you that, you can make a choice to change your life if you feel like it needs to be changed. So, absolutely. I mean, I recommend all these books. Again, they're my 5-star reads, but I recommend this for anybody who's feeling lonely themselves or is wondering, how to go about building a friendship or a community or just how to take that step outside of their apartment or home or outside of their job and make a connection. But on to the next book. And the next book is, sorry, hold on, it's hard to get this up. Here we go, Heaven by Mieko Kawakami. Now, this book really made me want to fight like middle schoolers. I'm not ashamed to say it either. It really did. And you would understand if you read this book. There is one main character, but there's also like a very strong secondary character. It's this boy and girl in middle school in Japan, and it focuses on their struggles with bullying in school. Our main character has a lazy eye, and the other girl is sort of like obviously poor or poverty stricken, or at least that's what she portrays. It's complicated, but there's an explanation in the story. I don't want to give too much away. So they have troubles with the other kids at school, but our main character, the young boy, genuinely more so than the other girl. She gets it pretty bad, but it's him that gets like physically assaulted and um treated like so incredibly cruelly. Like it really gets my blood pressure rising just thinking about it. And I'm sure if you read this book, your heart is going to race with like irritation and heartbreak and genuine concern. But it's also again still a really nice tender story. There's no romance in it, but it's the story of these two bullied kids finding common ground with each other and forming this very strong bond, a strong enough bond that like what happens at the end, I mean it's just heartbreaking, but it's also like a powerful story of like how you choose to move through this world, what you choose to believe as you like live this life. And not even just with our bullied main characters, but with the bullies themselves. They actually express some of their opinions, and it's so, I mean it is toxic, but I can't even say that it's like unbelievable because it's very much believable. Anyway, incredibly awesome, heartbreaking. Like it just gripped me. I finished this a little over a day. So definitely recommend it if you're looking for like a pulse pounding read. Another really dark read. This one was kind of a surprise horse for me. Hold on while I adjust the ISO here. It's called Brutes by Diz Tate. And I don't know what else to say about this book except that it's like feral. It's not unhinged, but it is deliberately wild. It's deliberately like something that steps away from humanity in a sense, almost like the carefully coiffed sort of like adolescence that we're kind of used to seeing in like theaters, movies, and other books where kids are kind of awkward and they're just kind of like, I just want to belong. These kids all belong to each other. It's a group of kids, some girls and one boy, and they're just like, it's more than just like a coven. It's like their legion. They refer to themselves as we throughout most of the book. And you do also get like switches in time where you see them as like adults in some stages, and like the differences between them all, between when they were children and when they were adults, is kind of weird and also a little like sad in some senses. I don't want to say that they all have bad lives, they don't, but there's just something that like it feels like they kind of lost something that was like genuine and precious from childhood going into adulthood, which is the case for most adults, I think. But this story is fantastic. It's set in Orlando. I'm not really sure of the timeline, but it's maybe the early 2000s or the late 90s, something of the sort. It's based off this group of kids who are like obsessed with the preacher's daughter. She disappears, and they're also obsessed with the mystery of her life. Um, they also, I mean, they're just a bunch of like dark yearners. That's probably what it is. They're dark yearners. They yearn, but it's like almost in like a violent way. So I really like this. I think I saw somebody like kind of refer to it as something sort of similar to the Virgin Suicides. I haven't read that book, but from what I remember of the movie, it doesn't quite ring like that. But if that helps you make a decision there, then all the better. Okay, now this is one of my favorite sci-fi series. It honestly is. This is the second book in the Southern Reach trilogy. The first book was Annihilation. They made a movie about it with Natalie Portman and Oscar Isaac. But Authority is the second book, and it is awesome. I read the first one. It was really great. The second one adds more of an element of horror to it. Also, like an espionage kind of like thriller type thing. Not very much a thriller, but more in the espionage and like tense vibe. You're with this guy named Control. Well, that's what he likes to go by. And he's coming into the Southern Reach facility as the new acting head, or so he thinks, or so he wants, somebody else wants. It's all very kind of it's complicated, it's intricate. And he's got to figure out, what to do about the fact that the Southern Reach really hasn't made any progress in investigating what Area X is. And Area X is this sort of like phenomenon that's happened within the wilds of Florida that like nobody can like escape out of, or very few can escape out of. And when they do, they come back, they're very wrong. It's this distortion in the world, and he's got to figure out what to do with that, what to do with Central, which is their like, overreaching government like authority figure for them, what to do with the world, what to do with himself. And all the while he's got to deal with, disseminating interests from other parties, the mysteries concerning his own family, and what they have to do with the Southern Reach, and what the biologist has to do with all of this in turn. And the biologist is somebody he has to study who came back from a previous expedition, but he's beginning to think that he might be wrong about that. I'm not going to say much more about that because it's really awesome. Highly recommend it if you're a fan of science fiction or horror or both, and also eco horror. It's just great. Okay, so these next 3 books, they were all in different branches of the library, and I really wasn't going to bother with that. So what you are going to get instead are pictures of the books in roughly the same frame as the others, and I hope you can understand and just enjoy the images and the flowers and everything else, because I just really couldn't do it. Okay, so the next book is actually the 3rd in the Southern Reach trilogy. I debated about putting sequels in here, but what can I say? It was all 5 stars for me. The next book is Acceptance, which was the final book in the Southern Reach trilogy, but Van Der came out in last year with the 4th book, which is called Absolution. I'm reading it currently, but Acceptance is sort of like the culmination of everything we went through in Annihilation, and yet somehow it's also something completely different from it. Again, it's that sort of like mystery and vagueness that makes the series so great, and also just works with most like apocalyptic or cosmic horror sci-fi when you can't describe what you're trying to see, because that's, it's just cosmic horror. It's something your mind can't comprehend. But anyway, we're back with Control and the biologist. They're now inside of Area X. They're trying to figure out, like, why is it suddenly changing? Like, what's going on with it? Trying not to spoil it so that it also doesn't spoil itself and the prior book, Authority. It's going to be kind of hard. But I'm just saying that it's them in there. And there's also, like, a lot of POV switches in this book. Between people in the past and them now, and somebody who was also on the other side. I mean, and there's a lot going on. There's temporal, inconsistencies, and there's secret like conspiracy groups, and the government might be working with like, weirdos, and when are they not? And like there's just so much that they're never gonna know the answer to, which is the whole point. You're not gonna figure out Area X. You will never know everything about it, even when you find the answers to it. And they do provide the answers in this book, some of them. It's not gonna be enough for you, which is what makes this kind of like a delicious book. Like I'm never gonna know, and I'm fine with not knowing, actually. Usually I'm not, and that's kind of why I drifted away from sci-fi when I got older. But in this series, it just makes total sense. It's like, oh, of course. Never going to know. But enough about that. Let's get into a classic here. This is Herland and Other Selected Stories by Charlotte Perkin Gilmans. And I was just looking up, classic authors and for whatever reason, and I never really heard of her. I'd heard of the story The Yellow Wallpaper, but never like either caught or remember the author's name. But these are fantastic. Like Herland, it took a bit to get through because there was a lot of, it was not any action, it was any sort of drama. I mean, towards the end there was a little bit, but it was most of the story about like a all-female utopia, which was awesome. And the 3 men who came in and just, well, quote unquote, discovered it, the drill. It wasn't even the complete story. There were other sequels to Herland that aren't in this book, where like some of the women go with the men back into the men's world, which sounds horrible. But anyway, the other short stories in here, of course, The Yellow Wallpaper was actually awesome. It was my first time reading it. And just like watching this woman slowly decline in mental health, and you know it, but she never know it. Like just through her like, dialogue back and forth with you, the reader. Like she never knew that she was the one in decline, which was kind of cool. Other favorites were My Poor Aunt, The Unexpected, and Making a Living. I think those were really nice. They were really well done. They're very short. Most of these short stories, besides Herland, is like maybe 3 to 4 pages each. So you don't have to read the whole book. You could just read a few stories and it would work out just as well. Especially, I don't know, I really do think I liked My Poor Aunt the best out of all the other stories. But The Yellow Wallpaper is like a very close second. Herland was great for like the breadth of what she did and how advanced it all got and sounded. But it was just kind of like it was kind of like reading Vern, I guess, but without the giant squid. It was more like reading Vern and not watching the movie Vern. Still recommended, still was a 5-star read for me. Now, our last book is a nonfiction book, and it's by Toni Morrison. This is her book, The Source of Self Regard, and selected essays and speeches. I'd been reading a lot of nonfiction. I did this sort of essay about female essayists back in March, just because I was like, oh, well, I'm reading all these male nonfiction essays, Mark Twain and all the philosophers. Like, what about the women though? So I looked, and there was a lot, especially Toni Morrison. These were so intricate, so detailed. I mean, she has such a way with words. And even watching some of her like interviews, you know, on YouTube or whatever, she's not a person who, does a lot of ums and uhs, which I kind of do and I always hate it, but I got trained out of it and then I retrained myself back into it as a form of rebellion. But she speaks so beautifully and she's so like, she takes her time thinking about it. And that same sort of like thoughtfulness and poise is prominent in all of this work. Some of my favorite essays from this collection is The Foreigner's Home, The Price of Wealth, The Cost of Care, Black Matters, The Source of Self-Regard, Rememory, and The Sight of Memory. Those stick out in my memory quite a bit. And I have a couple of pictures that I took, like just of like little paragraphs that I was like, my God, like, these are essays she'd written a couple decades back, but they still, I mean, it's like history is cyclical, and it seems like as of late in the 21st century, these cycles have gotten shorter and shorter. But it was just awesome. I recommended it if you are looking for maybe some nonfiction to kind of change up your reading habits, or if you're just in the mood for some Toni Morrison, which you should be. She's amazing. But that's all mine so far. I mean, I think it's great that I had 8 even this far. So I can't wait to tell you what my other 5-star books are in the next half of the year. Bye.